בואו מהר. אתה שומע? או שאתה חרש? אתה שומע? הרוח נכנסת לחלילים, והחלילים מנגנים, והכל נולד מזה שהיה פה צינור, ופתאום אני שומע מישהו שורק, אבל לא שריקה אנושית. אמרתי, אם הטבע מציע לך הצעה כזאת, אתה צריך להיות סתום, לא לאמץ את זה. הטבע הוא הבוס הגדול שלי. אני בא למקום, והמקום אומר לי. אני שומע את המקום.
איך בן אדם מרגיש שהטבע מדבר אליו? תסביר לי מה קורה שם, מה זה אומר? תסביר לי, מה זה?
אתה לא תוכל להבין את זה. אתה לא תוכל להבין את זה. רק מי שבאמת אומן אמיתי יבין את זה. אני לא יכול להסביר לך.
אבא תהיה חמוד, מספיק.
אני נורא חמוד.
אז בעצם אפשר להגיד שהטבע
כן.
הוא היחידי בעולם הזה שאתה באמת מקשיב לו וסופר את דעתו.
הוא לא היחידי, אני גם מקשיב לאשתי ולבנותיי, אבל הוא, יש לו כוח אדיר. הטבע לא מדבר בכלל על נתניהו. אתה מבין? זהו.
אז מה אתה אומר בזה?
אז אני אומר ששם אני לא צריך להקשיב לטבע.
בסדר, עזוב אותי מהנודניק הזה עכשיו נתניהו, אנחנו באנו לדבר על האמנות שלך.
אוקיי, אני רק אומר לך, האמנות שלי היא אמנות פוליטית. זה אומר שאני מגיב באופן פוליטי על דברים שקורים בעולם. וכשאומרים לך, אמנות ופוליטיקה לא הולך ביחד. אז אני אומר להם רק דבר אחד, גוארניקה.
איך?
גוארניקה. שמעת על גוארניקה? הציור של פיקאסו, גרניקה.
לא.
לא, תמי בואי, אנחנו הולכים מפה. בן אדם לא שמע על גוארניקה. אני מוכן בחינם לתת לך קורס באמנות. בחינם, ממש. פשוט זה בושה וחרפה שבן אדם לא יודע שתמונה של פיקאסו גרניקה. אל תשאלי, חווה.
מה קרה?
איזה מזל שלא נסעת איתנו.
האנדרטה מהממת, אבל המקום נראה כמו...
מי הזבלת?
כן.
הוא חיכה לי למטה, את צביקה, ונתן לי את המפתח למגדל. אבל המים לא זורמים.
מילא המים זורמים, תסתכל איך זה נראה כמו פח זבל.
הם צריכים לזרום פה, עד הקצה, שם יש הבאר. שם הם היו נספגים, ועולים במעגל סגור. זה מטריף לי את המוח, ואני אלחם עד שאני גם מתוך הקבר שלי אני אצעק.
שמה? מה מטריף?
מטריף אותי שלא שומרים על העבודות כמו שצריך. אני כבר לא עולה, אני לא מסוגל לעלות. אני לא מסוגל פיזית. נגמר.
Welcome once again to the Radical Imagination. I'm your host, Jim Vrettos. I'm a sociologist who's taught at John Jay College and Yeshiva University here in New York City. Despots, dictators, kings, monarchs, and authoritarian leaders throughout history have understood the profound importance of controlling what the public is able and allowed to think and see. Few men exemplify this better than Albert Speer, Adolf Hitler's chief architect, who created monuments to Nazi power he hoped would last for thousands of years. From bold, looming edifices to giant swastika banners, to the intimidating searchlights of the Cathedral of Night, piercing the night sky around Nazi party rallies in Nuremberg, Speer's designs became icons of Nazi propaganda, megalomania, and hopes to conquer the world. Today on the Radical Imagination, we celebrate the revolutionary political artistry and beauty of a much different public architect. Dani Karavan is an internationally renowned Israeli sculptor and artist who won the most prestigious international art awards. He created nearly 100 site-specific memorials and monuments around the world that merge beautifully into the environment and nature. Whether it's the Jerusalem City of Peace wall sculpture in the Israeli parliament, or the UNESCO World Heritage Site in Tel Aviv, or Passages, a memorial for refugees around the world built along the Spanish-French border, his works envision international peace and goodwill. They're a living and powerful counterforce to the architecture and engineering of nightmares, terror, hate, and death. His monumental outdoor sculpture, The Way of Human Rights, is engraved in each of its 27 pillars in German and another language, with one article of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It changed Nuremberg from Speer's city of racism and racial laws to the city of human rights, from a city of Nazi party rallies to a city of peace and human rights. Dani's art was political. He responded to events in a political way, and he brought his art into his politics. They belong together. Anyone creating a space is engaged in political work, whether he likes it or not. We're all under constant ideological attack of values, he argued. Speer admitted he would have sold his soul like Faust. Dani listened to the ultimate simplicity and beauty of nature and challenged man-made political establishments. Only morality in our actions could give beauty and dignity to our life. We're thrilled to welcome to the Radical Imagination once again a relatively new but already dear friend, the celebrated Israeli filmmaker Barak Heymann, whose own radical imagination has given us another masterpiece in his new documentary, High Maintenance, which celebrates the life and work, the boundless energy and optimism of Dani Karavan. High Maintenance just recently celebrated its world premiere at the Jerusalem Film Festival and won the award for Best Editing. Barak and his brother, Tomer's independent film company, Heymann Brothers Films, have produced over 20 films and documentaries for Israeli TV and cinema, where they've been nominated for the Israeli Academy Awards and Best Series Award at the Israeli Documentary Competition. Many of their works have been international co-productions where they premiered in numerous festivals worldwide and where they've won prestigious international awards, such as Best Documentary at the Toronto Film Festival. So, Barak, I wish Dani could be here with us. I know he is in spirit and in your great, great work. It's so wonderful to see you again. It's really a blessing to converse with you again and to talk about this great masterpiece you've made, and which I've fallen in love with. It's just a remarkable film by a remarkable individual. So thanks for being here. Thank you, Barak.
Thank you for inviting me again. It was a pleasure speaking with you the other day about Comrade Dov, my latest production.
Yes. I fell in love with Comrade Dov as well. And this was last year's movie, and now you've come up with another one with Dani Karavan. What struck you? There's some parallels between the two, isn't there? You seem to be attracted to a certain type of artistic, political force, right? Or what do you think?
I'm attracted most of all, and to start with, to people who live their life based on their passion, and they don't see, we say it in Hebrew, this expression, הם לא רואים בעיניים, they don't see in their eyes, which means they have a goal, they have a mission, they have a fantasy, they have an inside moral code, they have a heart they listen to, and they follow their heart, and they follow their talent, and they follow their truth all the way, and they won't let anyone destroy this journey. And this journey is always full of obstacles, full of ups and downs, and it's never an easy one. but it's the only one they can maintain, they can live according to. They are radical people. We are in the Radical Imagination program, right?
There we are. Yes.
They are radical people. So if it was Comrade Dov, he's very radical, not only with his left-wing agenda, which I don't think it's radical at all. It's the most pure, honest, I don't know, common sense kind of political ideology he has. But he's radical in the way that he never lie. He won't lie, even though he's a politician. He doesn't lie to himself and he doesn't lie to his people. And Dani Karavan, the new protagonist of my new film, which I've been working on for a couple of years, parallel to Comrade Dov, by the way, is also very radical because he has this crazy imagination in his mind about those huge sculptures, those site-specific huge monuments all over the world. Some of them are like more than 3 kilometers long, like in Cergy-Pontoise, not so far from Paris. And it took him nearly 40 years to complete it. You have to be very radical. You have to be crazy, crazy man in order to invest so much time, so much energy, so much effort in one piece. And everything he does all the way. And he doesn't believe in shortcuts. And it brings him into a lot of conflict with reality, with people, and sometimes also with himself. But he never give up. And it's something which I admire. Yeah, he was invited to create a beautiful memorial site to respect the Polish people, the Polish Christians that who helped the Jews. And sometimes, basically always, when they did it, they risked their life. So imagine you are in the 30s, you are a Polish person, you have your family, and you cannot continue your life like nothing happened when you see that other Polish people who are not lucky enough not to be Jewish, they are Jewish, they are being murdered by Nazis. And you take one family of Jewish people to your house, you hide them from the Nazis. You hide them.
Right.
Because you want to save their life, because you are a human being and you know how to define what is good and what is bad. And this is evil to kill those Jewish people just because they're Jewish. And you take them to your house and you risk yourself, you risk your family, you risk the life of your kids, because if they will catch you, not only they will kill the Jews, but they will kill you and all of your family. And when people do something so heroic, it's a very good thing to respect them and to build a monument in order to respect them. And many people have a lot to say about it. So is it about the Jewish people, some of the Jewish people that are saying, no, why do you have to do this? Because, come on, this is like, there were so many bad Polish people. Why to, like,
honor
the very few that were helping? And he says, and I totally agree with him, and also Professor Yudo Bauer, who is an amazing, important historian in Israel, is saying in the film to Dani, because there were so few of them, because they were just a tiny bit out of many people who were not so good, it's even more important to respect them. And other people tell him, don't you dare to do it, because you are helping the Polish government to clean themselves, because anyway the Polish government is very busy portraying the Polish society as only being victims of the Nazis, but never do anything bad, which is not exactly true. They are the victims, but some of them were also doing some horrible things. So reality is complicated, and Dani found himself in the middle of this very emotional political drama.
You know, Barak, I don't know if you realize that actually on last week's show, we did a show on film called The Still Life in Lodz with the film director, you may know him, Slavik Grunberg. And within the film, one of the people that was on the show also was Lilka Elbaum. So we did have this debate that you also are, you're talking about that's going on in Israel as well. So has Dani's work been accepted? What do Israelis think of his work?
This is a very interesting question because many Israelis, almost all the Israelis, heard the name of Dani Karavan because it's a very, very famous, important name, Dani Karavan. But most of them, or at least I would say many of them, don't exactly know who is Dani Karavan, what is he doing, what did he do, how do you know his name, what is it? And actually, once you told them, oh, this is the guy who designed the Culture Square here in the heart of Tel Aviv. This is the guy who designed and created the White Square, also in Tel Aviv, next to Givatayim, a beautiful piece that you can see also in my film. This is the guy who did the Negev monuments down in the south next to Be'er Sheva. Ah, wow, I know those places. I've been there so many times. I just didn't know who is the guy. And then you tell them, yeah, he also designed this wall in the Knesset, in the parliament, in the Israeli parliament. And then they realize that, actually we know the guy's work, but we didn't connect it with his name. So in some ways, I believe this film also is doing some kind of historical justice for this guy, who is very, very famous and very, very well received outside of Israel. In Germany and in Japan, he won the most important art awards ever. I would say that he's maybe one of the most important, famous, successful Israeli artists abroad. But in Israel, in many ways, they didn't really know how to treat him, because he's not like an artist who is like putting his art in the museum. All the works he ever did in life was always works that people were ordering from him. It was never something that he wake up in the morning and start designing. It's always like works that someone commissioned. Yeah. And you don't even know how to call it exactly. What is he doing exactly? He's not exactly a painter. He's not exactly an architect. He's not exactly a sculptor, because you don't see his sculptures in the museum. All of his sculptures are actually huge installations that people can walk on and play inside and spend some time. So how to even define his art? Now they call it site-specific. So Israel society didn't really know what to do with this very special man. And I hope and I want to believe that once you see the film, you understand more the guy and his art, which is beautiful.
And Barak, I agree with you. I mean, site-specific, I mean, that word, that doesn't capture what he is. And I was searching for that depiction of him as well. Do the Israelis understand the political messages he's trying to get across there? Do they realize that he, in the wall there in the Knesset, where it's in Hebrew and in Arabic, where he insisted on that so that the Israelis have to understand that there's always been a presence here in the land? So is that something that Israelis have begun to incorporate, the really radical political message he's giving too?
Wow, you're touching a very sensitive topic, because on one hand, yes, some people understand the message. Some people, when they watch the film or when they just follow his art and his career, totally get it, of course. Mm-hmm. But the majority in Israel obviously, the reality says it by itself.
Right.
And proof it. The majority of the people in Israel couldn't care less for human rights, for democracy, for equalness, because now everybody are protesting against Bibi Netanyahu, and everybody says that he's destroying the democracy. And I am happy that people are protesting, and I am happy that people are against him, because he's very dangerous man. He's horrible. He's a complete disaster. He's the worst thing that can happen. I understand. But when you talk about the democracy that he is destroying, what kind of democracy it is? Is it democracy for Jews? Because when they talk about democracy, they don't talk about Gaza. They don't talk about the West Bank and the occupied territories. They don't talk about apartheid. Because if they care about all those things like occupation and apartheid and colonialism and all those horrible things that Israel is so good with, then we would have a different regime, you know? Because if you're really worried about democracy, then you don't vote for Gideon Saar or Naftali Bennett or Yair Lapid or Benny Gantz, because all those people don't know what is democracy, because they only care about the Jewish people. They don't care about the Palestinians. They don't care about the non-Jewish people. So they don't know what is democracy. So if people were understanding deeply what Dani Karavan is talking about, then, you know, Comrade Dov would be the prime minister.
Same, absolutely. And we would have Bernie Sanders as well. We both, America is grappling with some of the same things you're talking about. You know, I think you do know, we've had Mor Laushi on and Maya Zinstein on the show here in the last month or two. And it's so thank you very, very much for helping me make that comment. Again, incredible films about the Christian right-wing evangelicals, and with Maya's wonderful work, Till Kingdom Come, the influence of AIPAC, the capitals of the Kings of Capitol Hill, and so on. And what struck me as you were talking with Maya the other week when she was on was some of the Israeli reaction to the Christian evangelical money that was coming in, and talking about the Armageddon and then the rivers of blood that would include Jews who would be, you know, the infidels and so on. And then she asked the Israeli woman about it, and she said, well, you know, this will be maybe in 1,000 years. Meanwhile, we'll take their money. And I remember I said to her, you know, what's more scary than any of these evangelical nut jobs is the Israeli response by this woman. This is what you're saying. I mean, you know, we've got to wake up here in this country. We're trying. You do as well. I know that there's going to be, for example, a joint Israeli-Palestinian memorial for victims of violence. And that's going to be in, I think, in May or June. I mean, these are the sort of ventures that your country and people have to be involved in as well. Otherwise, you know, we're going to lose our democracy. We're going to lose our prophetic heritage. And that's, again, what Dani and Dov really represent, a powerful, powerful prophetic voice. And I know I want to bring in at some point, too, Cornel West, because the Israeli politics is also part of the American struggle in higher education throughout the world here, or throughout the country. So let me start by asking you that question. How can we build the sort of international understanding and human rights understanding that we desperately need in this country as well?
It's the $1 million question. I don't really know the answer, because if I knew, I would invest my life in it. And I think the media is one of the elements, one of the keys to change the awareness and understanding of people. This is something that unfortunately, only Bibi Netanyahu understands. And if you would watch the film of my friend Dan Shadur, King Bibi, you would see that Bibi Netanyahu understood already tens of years ago that controlling the people mind by the media is the key for staying in power. And I know it sounds very provocative, and some people would hate me for saying so, but he is a very good student of Goebbels, because this is exactly what happened in the 30s in Germany. They understood that in order to manipulate the mind of people, you have to tell them a story. And if you tell them the same lie over and over again, at the end they believe in it.
They'll believe it, yeah.
So you know, the media right now in Israel, and the mainstream media are all cooperating with the regime. They are not opposition. So if you want to know about the real thing, the real truth, if you want to know exactly what's happening, then you have to read the local call, we call it in Sicha Mekomit in Israel, 972 in English, or Hamakom Achi Cham Gehenom, the hottest place on hell, or Aoketz. Like there are 2, 3, 4 alternative media sources, but 95% of the people in Israel don't even know about them. And they read Ynet or Yediot Achronot. Haaretz is also okay, not amazing. For me, it's not enough. And anyways, they are very small, so most of the people don't even read Haaretz. And this is something that, help people not to understand what's going on. No one talks about Gaza, for example, just as an idea. No one talks about Gaza. Not even Meretz, the Israeli Zionist left party, the only one from the Zionist parties that calls themselves real left, even then, they don't speak about Gaza. So how do you want to expect people to think about Gaza? And this is something so horrible and so unbelievable. You cannot believe that those things are happening. Such a big jail, and Israel is controlling it, and everybody thinks that Israel doesn't have anything to do with it. So the situation here in Israel, unfortunately, is not bad, is terrible, and is more terrible than it was a few months ago when we talked about Komordov. And unfortunately, after the next election, I'm afraid that the situation will be even more terrible. And I'm sorry to be negative and pessimistic, but I don't have today a lot of hope.
Well, we're going to keep up some of the hope here, and Dani certainly, and Dov will help us with that as well. But we also have to understand here, I think in America, we have acted, and the left here and progressives have been rather feeble as well. And we need to understand how we've begun, that we for a long time have enabled some of this to happen. And I think, again, Moore's work and Maya's work, it was interesting when Maya said to me that most Israelis were unaware of these Christian evangelicals and the influence they've had. I mean, among the American left, we've known about this for decades. And yet, again, as I say, we've been also silenced over and over again. But I think the word has to go out. And I think this is an interesting case. I wonder if you would care to comment a little about it with Cornel West.
I have to be honest with you.
Sure.
I don't feel comfortable to talk about it because I don't know enough. I just don't know enough. But
you know what? That's okay. That's okay, Barak. But you know, it's the larger issue is about the discussion we can have here in America about Israeli politics. And his mentioning, he again is against occupations of any form, whether it's Israeli or Palestinian and so on. So we need to desperately have that that discussion here, because we are censoring people, and we are not allowing that message to happen here, as well as what you're describing here in Israel. So we need to keep pushing this on and make the connections. People are going to hate maybe me saying some of this too. I will have on in about a month a wonderful scholar from Temple University, Leila Berman, who's written a book about Jewish philanthropy. It's a multi-billion-dollar complex. This is a highly respected, brave academic who is going to point out the donor and the incredible amount of wealth that is going into our institutions, into our educational system. And the great majority of them happen to be from a very conservative viewpoint. And so what we're getting is not that majority of American Jews are supporting what's going on in Israel, but we have a disproportionate amount of power that is being wielded on our very important institutions, including the Biden administration, that is really not enabling us to have the sort of dialogue, the desperate dialogue that we need to have, that you are presenting in your films, that Dov is talking about, that Dani and his works are also exhibiting.
Yeah. But you know, I'm listening to you, and I also think about our whole discussion, and I actually think right now that there are some little reasons to be not only pessimistic but also a little bit optimistic, because look at Me Too. Look at Me Too. 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago, men could do whatever they want. Men could, I'm not talking only about raping and doing like horrible things, but men could be very nasty, very aggressive, very violent, very ugly, behave ugly and treat women like shit and do horrible things without paying any price for it. And look at this revolution nowadays, especially because the internet is allowing everything to be exposed very fast and very easy. If someone is doing something wrong, and many men are doing something wrong, the careers of many men can be totally destroyed, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Well, Governor of New York might be on the ropes here as well. What about Netanyahu? He's got a reputation too. I mean, come on, is that quite a woman?
But what I'm saying is that it's an example of something that it looked at some point like no one can ever change it, and people change it. So people are creating the evilness, and people are the ones who can save the humanity from this evilness. People were creating the apartheid in South Africa, and people were creating the discrimination in the States, in America. I was just reading the book for kids, for my 6-year-old kid, about Martin Luther King. And, he was reading it and he was like, he couldn't believe. What does it mean? Like a black kid is going in the bus with his mother and he has to sit in the back because there are seats which are only for white people.
Right.
But at those times when it happened, no one could really believe and imagine that the reality will change so dramatically. Now, I'm not saying that there is no racism anymore in the United States. Obviously there is, and obviously there are horrible white policemen who are killing black people, and we know everything. But you cannot say that there is no progress. You cannot say that the reality now is the same like it was 70 years ago. It's not.
Absolutely.
So on that level, you can say that, now we cannot imagine better reality, but in 50 years from now, I won't be here anymore, you won't be here anymore, but my kids and maybe my grandkids will be here, and they will hopefully enjoy a better world, because this is not possible to keep living like this. This is not only not moral, but it's unbelievable to believe that Israel can still do all those horrible things without paying any price and without changing. Now, look at what happened just recently when they decided in the International Court to investigate war crimes, not only of Israel and the IDF, also of Hamas. Because also Hamas is doing horrible things, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And the Israelis, the majority of the people, and for sure the majority of the Knesset members, and for sure the government, they don't want it. They don't want it because they know they have a lot to hide. When you are against investigation, it's because you have a lot to hide.
So let me understand. So this would be an investigation on both sides of human rights violations, and the majority of Israelis would not support that even-handed investigation by the World Court. Is that correct? Right.
Yes.
Barak, tell me, the Israeli psyche, we can also talk about the American psyche. Are we talking about such a traumatized people? Is the experience of such hatred directed against Jews for so long, is this part of the denial and the inability to deal with one's own oppressiveness?
You know, when many men who are violent to their wives and to their kids, many of them were victims by themselves for horrible things that they experienced in their childhood. They were seduced, they were raped, they were beaten up. They have a lot of reasons to become so evil. But then it means they have to go to the treatment, not the people that they are beating up. So Israel is the one who needs to see a shrink and to be treated. And I don't trust the morality and the conscience of the Western world, you know, the free world, because we see that this world brings people like Donald Trump to be in power. So I don't wait for them to save us from ourselves. I do hope that many great Israeli people like Dov Hanin and like Dani Karavan, together with many other people, Palestinians and Israelis, secular and religious, poor and rich, black and white, but people with high level of awareness and of morality and of sensation of justice will gather forces and fight this evilness. I mean, one must believe that it will happen one day in order to survive and not to go crazy.
Absolutely, absolutely. What about some of the recent films about the Orthodox and the ultra-Orthodox? That's gained a lot of viewership here, certainly in American, perhaps in Israel too. Shitzel and the unorthodox. What is the role of the religious right, if you will, or the settler movement? I don't want to lump everybody together here, but the influence of the Orthodox viewpoint, do you think, on the largely still secular Israeli society?
It's interesting you are bringing it up, because my next film that I'm working on those days is about ultra-Orthodox Jewish people here in Bnei Brak practicing and dancing capoeira. And I'm very attracted to this world, not because it's a world which doesn't have problems and doesn't have racism inside and doesn't have violence inside. It's a very complicated world. but it's a very rich world with a lot of colors. And this is also something very upsetting in the Israeli politics, because while many of my friends can be very sensitive to any kind of racism against Arabs, against Muslims, Palestinians, Ethiopians, Russians, women, gay, whatever, they can be very cool with racism and generalization with the ultra-Orthodox people. Many people think that all of them, all the ultra-Orthodox Jewish people, all of them are like just horrible, lazy people that we pay for them, they don't do anything, and they are stupid and homophobic and right-wing and chauvinistic and violent and primitive and I don't know.
Right.
While it's only partly true. Some of them are like this, like many people who are not ultra-Orthodox are also right-wing or I don't know, chauvinistic or primitive and homophobic and violent and whatever. And some of them are beautiful people. And some of them are both. And, you know, it's a very complex society. And the majority of the secular people in Israel can have very strong opinion about those people, about this society, without even knowing them well enough. And I believe that racism is racism is racism is racism. And this is something which I try with my very humble means to fight, or at least to talk about with our films.
I admire your humanity so much and the capacity to reach out beyond our narrow vision and to bring these worlds to us. I can't agree more. This is what we really need more and more of. In the few minutes we have, and thank you. So we're going to be showing clips of Dani's work, but tell us again, what's your, it's maybe a stupid question. What is, give us an idea of your favorite works of Dani's and why.
For sure, as you can see in the film, passages for Walter Benjamin, the homage for Walter Benjamin in Portbou next to Barcelona in Spain.
Right.
It's unbelievable piece, and this is why it also in the film. And the moment when Michael Sfard, the human rights attorney, is talking about it as part of the 89th birthday party ceremony for Dani, is one of my favorite parts in the film, because he explains in such a beautiful, emotional, sensual way the connection between art and politics. And this connection is something which goes along the whole film, from the first episode to the last one. And so this piece by far and for sure is very meaningful for me. Also, the Sinti Roma memorial site, I don't remember exactly how he named it, but you can see it also in the film in Berlin, in Tiergarten. It's such a beautiful piece. When you are there and you look at it and you feel it and you are inside of it and you experience it, it's really stick to you and stay inside of you. It's and you cannot explain why. And this is what makes it such a one-of-a-kind kind of piece of art, because you cannot explain what is it and why it is affecting you so strongly.
So each will be affected in different ways, and that's so incredible for art to do that. That's what it's great art actually does. Did he also does Dani work on smaller projects, or has it always been these large public creations?
No, everything is always public. His art is almost always for the public and to be used by the public. It did have and still has from time to time like a smaller exhibitions of small pieces that you can come and see, but most of the times it will be like maybe models of things which you can see in a much larger scale in reality. So yes, most of it are quite big pieces, and you know what?
What?
The most exciting piece of art and piece of work by Dani for me
What?
is Dani Karavan. His mind, his heart, his way of thinking, his energy, his passion, his craziness. Like his Dani Karavan. This is what it is. This is why I called it in Hebrew for the film Dani Karavan, because this is an amazing piece of work and piece of art. This man.
It is, and he is, and the openness to life. And there's so many scenes. He's walking along, and he sees the little flower. He says, "Look at this, and look at the tree. Have you ever seen anything like this?" And he's playing with the sand. I mean, it's like a creative child, looking at the world at the first moment of creation. You're right. It's so infectious. His life, his exuberance, just his feeling. It's impossible not to love him and to be moved by him. And if you're not, you've got to, as you said, you've got to go get a shrink to open up your heart and soul. And Barak, you're doing this in your work. And I wish so much, both my wife and I could be there. We haven't been to Israel in a long, long time. I would love to go to Dani's celebration. Please tell him that a New York alternative media host was so moved by him. My grandfather, as you may have known, is an artist, was an artist, studied at the Royal Academy in Dresden, and he reminded me so much of my grandfather and the love of life. And Barak, you've done it again. Thank you so very, very much. I really can't wait for your next film to come out. And we talked about last time, maybe you have that other project you can work with the military, with some of the ex-soldiers and the refuseniks, and because I think that's very, very important as well. The violence.
I want to do so much, and for sure I will not do even 10% of what I want to do.
Well,
but be sure that Dani Karavan is going to watch this show. I'm going to send it to him. The link once it will be published. Be sure.
Oh, that would be my honor. I'd be so blessed for him to see this. I'm thankfully it's the end of the show, because I might start tearing up here, because
so tears are a good thing.
It is a good thing. It is. I'm so moved by your work and by your humanity, and I hope within the next, I don't know, a couple of years or so, a few years, that we will be able to make that trip to Israel. Or you come to New York, you're always welcome.
Okay. For sure.
All right. Listen, peace. Thank you very much.
Peace and love.
Peace and love. We provide. Stay strong. Stay well.
Thank
you
very much.
very, very much. This is Jim Vrettos again. We are so glad that you've watched us here on The Radical Imagination. We'll see you again next week on The Radical Imagination.
כשטסתי לפריז לפני חודשיים, משהו כזה, אז באמצע נסיעה פתאום היה לי חצי עין, היה לי חושך.
זה אני יודע, זה דרך אגב סיפרת לי כבר את זה
לא.
הייתי אצלי ב6 ביוני, ואפילו התפעלת מהתמונות שהיו בחוץ.
אצלך ממש?
ממש ככה. הייתי אצלי ב6 ביוני.
מה אתה אומר?
ואני רואה שהכל רשום.
יש לי מידה מסוימת של שכחה. לא זכרתי שהייתי אצלו בכלל. ואני כבר לא זוכר שום דבר מזה. רק פניו היו מוכרים. ככה זה, אין מה לעשות, צריך לחיות עם זה.
אבל זה משהו חדש?
כן. זה לאט-לאט. שכחה שלאט-לאט נעשית יותר קריטית. שמות שכחתי כבר מזמן, כן? עכשיו מילים גם פה ושם הולכות לי לאיבוד. אני רק לא רוצה להגיע לקבל, איך זה נקרא, המחלה הזאת, ששוכחים את הכל, שלא מכירים אף אחד. נפריע לו.
דני, למה אתה מלחיץ אותו? מה לא ידע מהר?
מה אכפת לך? הייתי רוצה שאולי תעזור לי. יש כל עברת על כל החומרים.
כן.
עברת על הכל. גם עברת על חוות הדעת של ה... איך קוראים לזה? נוירולוגית.
תראה, גם יכול להיות שתחושת עיבוד הזיכרון שלך היא משהו מאוד מאוד טבעי שקורה לכולנו. ככל שאנחנו צוברים מידע, אנחנו גם שוכחים, או יש לנו הרגשה שאנחנו שוכחים יותר.
הוא אוהב ללכת לרופא.
זה מה שהיא המציאה.
זה בשבילו ממש בילוי.
אתה מבין?
הוא הולך לרופא כמו שהולכים.
אם אתה רוצה השמצות עליי, תקבל ממנה. חופשי.
הוא הולך לרופא. אני צריכה ללכת לרופא, אני אומללה. ואני חושבת רק איך זה יהיה, מתי זה ייגמר. הוא מתכנן כמו שהולכים, אתה יודע. ידברו עליו, הוא יספר שהיה לו קשה לנשום וכאבה לו האוזן, והיו לו בעיות, ויש מי שמקשיב. זה חלום.
ובודק.
לא?
הציר הגדול של סרג'י פונטואז היא אחת העבודות הכי חשובות שלי. פסל אורבני של 3 קילומטר. אני עובד עליו כבר 40 שנה. אתה יכול לתאר לעצמך מה זה? לעבוד 40 שנה על אותו פרויקט?
Your name?
דני קרוון.
I like your projet. C'est formidable.
Merci.
C'est magnifique. Je suis fière d'habiter ici.
Ah oui?
Dans votre projet, c'est magnifique.
Merci beaucoup.
Il y a beaucoup de monde qui vient.
Ah oui, je vis maintenant aujourd'hui, c'était beaucoup de monde ici.
Merci et bonne
Merci.
continuation.
Merci.
Donc, à l'occasion, qu'est-ce que je voulais dire? Je vais dire à tout le monde, j'ai rencontré Moussika.
Okay.
Ah oui, c'est magnifique là.
זה בנוי כמו יצירה מוזיקלית. אתה לא רואה את הכל בבת אחת. זו יצירה שמתפתחת עם הזמן. בעבודות שלי בכלל, הזמן, הדרך, מאוד חשובה. זה מהלך. רגרד.
זה מדהים מפה, אבא.
כן? זה פה דבר נורא, זה סקנדל, שככה השאירו את כל הצמחייה פה, ולא הורידו אותה בזמן. זה פשוט לא עבודה, זה פסל אדמה. זה פשוט חוסר שום יחס לעבודת אומנות. שום יחס. הלכלוך הזה למעלה, זה פשוט שערורייה. צריך להוריד להם את הידיים ואת הרגליים, להשאיר את זה ככה מלוכלך, ולא לנקות את זה. זה פשוט שבר לב. זאת עבודה שאני עשיתי אותה, אני לא זוכר מתי, לפני 20-30 שנה, משהו כזה. זה יציאה מתוך תחנה של מטרו, והקוביות האלה מכניסות אור לגראז' למטה, ובלילה האור של הגראז' כאילו יוצא החוצה. אז העבודה הזאת בלילה נראית באופן מיוחד. הלו חווה, אני נמצא בננטר, והכל נראה כל כך יפה וכל כך יוצא מן הכלל. חבל שאת לא פה איתנו. ופשוט זה מדהים, צריך לבוא כאן בלילה לצלם את זה. la. Non, ça marche pas. Non, nous fais pas. צלמי לי את זה, אן. Est-ce que tu veux te photographer? Je vais envoyer ça.
אתה רוצה ללכת קרוב לאחד עם אור?
בשביל מה?
קרוב לאחד עם אור.
אבל בשביל מה? תראי, זה לא עבודה. אין שום סיבה לצלם את זה. להפך, לצלם את זה, וכמו שאני עשיתי סקנדל. להגיד שזה לא בסדר, וככה לא שומרים על עבודת אומנות. אין אור בעמודים, אין אור בחלק מהקוביות, פה זה מת, ושם זה חי. זה סקנדל. אני בשום אופן לא מוכן שזה ככה יהיה. אני כועס, אני אלך להגיד זה, אני כתב מכתב, זה לא יכול להיות ככה. הם צריכים להדליק את האור. יש לי מעל 70 עבודות בכל העולם. הרבה מהן במצב ממש לא טוב. העבודות האלה אמורות להישאר לתמיד.